I'm hoping it's just that that restream was being a little dickbag on my end that closed off that closed off that stream at a little like 5 hours and a few seconds, right? That was interesting. Let's hope it was just a stupid coincidence. So, let's get back to Da-da-da-da. So, let us reattach this one. And star that. And switch the view mode. Go to share screen. And let's go back to this guy, Oz. It looks like is what he goes by online. And let's back up a little bit on his own video, breaking down his issues with Ethel. Hold on. Is there another layout I might like it better? No, that's really borked. How about one? Can I adjust the picture-in-picture sizing? Drag to move. That's not what I want to do. What about resize? Can I resize just a tiny bit? No. Maybe. Wait. Let's No, that's not really helping me. Because I don't want to have like such a tiny little thing. Because I like my face. It took several years and some crippling dysphoria for me to actually like my face, even without makeup. So I admit, like, the reason that I usually go with this layout is because I just like my face. It took until the HRT really set in for me to, like, think my face is, just adorable enough. Okay, so let's see. But I don't know, like having it like super big like it is, just like, like exactly the same size as the other one. No. No. Okay, I mean, that's all right. Names on or off. Radius. What is this gonna do? Radius. Oh, that rounds out the corners. That's neat. But Cherry Berry says that she likes my face too. Thank you so much. But yeah, as I've said, like it took a while and a few years for the HRT to really settle in for me to think that my face is kind of cute. I don't like admitting that because it kind of looks like I'm full of myself, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, I am on the internet. I am streaming on the internet, and this is the kind of thing that happens when you end up streaming on the internet. It's like you end up indulging in some of the, like even the most low-key narcissistic tendencies that, just about everybody has. Everybody has at least a few of them, has at least a few narcissistic traits, and, it's what keeps us happy with our lives to some extent, or at least like keeps us having, some kind of self-image that can be given a positive spin, or at least a spin that, we, like, right? But it's when you have too much narcissism in your head that, you know, um, um, I'm going to be doing a puzzle stream on Sunday, and I've been working on a crochet basket, and just for my own use, and I'm right now in the um oh shit, I'm so far behind from all the talking I've done tonight. But I'm working on a scarf for a friend I'm going to be seeing tomorrow. Anyway, we're going to return to this that we were watching. I don't know. Let's start out from the beginning again then. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to be dropping in commentary throughout where I can um where I've got some points where I want to commentate on. I'm gonna copy the URL from the top of the screen and share it in the chat. Share it in the chat bar so that people want to go take a look at the the links that that our guy Oz here. I don't know him. He seems nice enough. I mean, we've discussed this video of his in the sources pinned in comments. So if you want to go check those. Check those. Links in description for Courtney Orchard's GoFundMe. Courtney is Courtney Orchard, aka Courtney Pete, is being like Pete being her legal surname, is Lily Orchard's younger sister by about a year. I think exactly a year and a half. And Lily Orchard is a she's a trans woman on the internet who also has a terrible, terrible track record with manipulating people, and like especially young people, especially underage people in her audience. And Courtney was very easily Lily Orchard's first victim of this kind of thing. So also and see, like, this kind of content warning, this is fine. I went on in my first stream about the Ethelverse, the that like, while it might seem like a good idea to like really like go ham on any content warnings about whatever is like being discussed in a chat room, or like whatever potentially sensitive topics might come up in a YouTube video. Like, while it may seem like appropriate to go ham on that just in case, like, you want to prepare people with some kind of trauma disorder, whether it be a form of PTSD, like I've got CPTSD, or another, trauma disorder, like, at least like when you put it down, when you write it out, it sounds like a good idea. But the professionals who study the psychology of these things actually say that you do not want to go ham. You want to keep any content warning, like, as you want to keep it, you want to keep it as broad as possible, but like, with some, like, with like don't be too specific. Like, so like, when you open, like, say you are, a 14-year-old who just got back from outer space, and therefore you have no idea what the hell Law and Order SVU is. Which is why you're coming back from outer space, right? So, like, you were born in outer space, your parents have come back here after, have come back to Earth after you are 14 years old, and so you don't know what Law and Order SVU is. So, but when you open up the TV Guide channel for Law and Order SVU because like you don't have the printed, like weekly TV Guide magazine delivered to your house anymore. And when you because like and those were good because when you had the TV Guide, you don't need a TV. I will give you props if you know that reference. Anyway, so so yeah, like when you have a TV Guide, you don't need the TV. But so like when you open up the TV Guide channel now, which now forces you to have a TV to read the TV Guide, it will say about a Law and Order SVU episode, like it will give like like on most episodes I've seen on the Guide channel for cable TV, it will give like a brief episode synopsis, and it will say this episode loosely based on the accusations against Michael Jackson. Now, I'm not going to rant about Michael Jackson, but I will say that there is significant evidence to to point to the likelihood that Jackson was accused falsely. Like even the two guys who did the that Leaving Neverland movie that was on HBO a couple years ago, Robson and Safe Chuck, I believe. Now, I do think something happened to at least one of those guys. One of the two guys in that film did seem like, I don't know, like he. Now, I don't want to like put up this idea of like like there's a right and wrong way to be a victim, right? But it is easier to believe him when he says something happened to him, as a kid in like the aspiring child actor circles, right? And I forget which one it is, but like he does seem a little bit more sympathetic. I do get the idea that something did happen to him. I just don't think it was Michael Jackson who did it. People have pointed out that Robson and Safe Chuck were both like facing bankruptcy when they agreed to do the Finding or Leaving Neverland film, and so I think it was just easy for them to point to Michael Jackson because he had already been I think 10 years at the time of filming, at least 10 years since at the time of filming, because I remember when that came out, and I remember when Jackson himself passed away. But so yeah, like I believe something happened to at least one of those two guys. Like, and I'm not saying that, and I say at least because there's the possibility that one happened to the other guy. I just find one of them a little bit more sympathetic than the other one, which it's like, I mean, I know not all victims have to be sympathetic, but it just is what it is. We all like make these little, tiny judgments that like even when we know like logically as I'm explaining, as I've been explaining that, yeah, like not all victims are perfect victims, right? Like some victims are just like kind of jerks and right? So it's like I do believe that at least one of those two guys, possibly both, something happened to them when they were, aspiring child actors, and it seems really likely that it seems very unlikely that it was Michael Jackson who did it to them because like there's just I mean there's such a lack of evidence that any reasonable person would say that it's evidence of absence, right? Like, like even when there's a lack of, conclusive evidence, there's usually at least something a little circumstantial to point to and say it's still fairly plausible, right? But like, like with Michael Jackson, like there is such a there's such an absence of evidence that a reasonable person could only conclude that it's evidence of absence, right? So it's like I think they were both hard up for cash. At least the one of them, possibly both, wanted to talk about, like some of the stuff that happened to them as kids in the, aspiring child actor circles in, Los Angeles at the time. and they were offered to, take part in, this, film that somebody, like went to them with the idea of doing it, right? This has been shown as a fact in, the in like behind the scenes of Leaving Neverland, right? That's why I keep referring to it as a film rather than a documentary. Like, somebody who didn't know these two guys approached them with this idea that he had, right? It's like I said, they were facing bankruptcy. And Michael Jackson being long deceased at that point by at least a decade just seemed like an easy person to pin it on, especially when the allegations, like go back to, like an extortion attempt in the early 90s. And that has been proved. Oh shit, what's his name? Ethan and Jared something. It's the guys who made the first accusation. That, like, the dude and his kid, like the divorced dad with like major, like, delusions of grandeur, that like he wanted to be a filmmaker and he wanted to extort money out of Jackson to make this film idea he had, right? Like, that has been shown so many times in so many ways, right? So it's like I said, like, but in the court of public opinion, there's still that reasonable doubt that, well, okay, maybe Michael Jackson did do. I mean, he is a kind of a weirdo, but um, but yeah, like forensic psychologists have pointed out that, Jackson's behavior, while eccentric, shares more in common with somebody who has been psychologically traumatized, and when those, like, as a child, and so, like, when those traumatic memories are triggered, he regresses into a childlike state. So, like, that's why he was usually surrounded by minders, 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 like, so people who, like, helped him keep his shit together when, he was psychologically regressing over a triggered memory of trauma, right? But I got onto that when I was like, so, like, okay, like I said, if somebody was coming from outer space, I'd never seen SVU before, they go to the TV Guide channel on the cable box, and it says, like, okay, this episode loosely based on the allegations against Michael Jackson, and it will say, and it will give the rating TVM, which is like most episodes of SVU. There's a few that are marked TV 14, but let's be honest, most of them are rated TVM, like, even for, like the main network TV, because, you're showing it after like 10 p.m., right? So, and it says TVM, um, TVM, let's say, like, CSA and child abuse, right? So, like, that is what psychologists who specialize in PTSD and other, like, trauma, and other, like, trauma disorders say. It's like, you want to keep, like, yeah, you can be, like, somewhat specific on the broad topics that will come up if you want to put in a content warning. So, like, like broad topic abuse and child abuse, a broad topic CSA, broad topic. So, like, that's it. That's it. This is as specific as the recommend, because having CPTSD myself, I know how a CPTSD brain works. Now, yes, every case is unique. Every case is unique, and, but it's unique in the sense of, like, what will trigger a, what will trigger a PTSD episode, right? Like, that's how it's unique. But you can still, like, say, like, okay, there are definitely these tendencies in a PTSD brain because you've been damaged. Like, your brain has been damaged in this specific kind of way, that there are some, like, there's a predictability factor in what kinds of behaviors are displayed during a PTSD episode, even a prolonged PTSD episode that, like, trips into chronic depression, which, by definition has to last, 2 weeks or longer, right? And see, so, like, when a PTSD brain sees this much, like, sees this much in the content warning, they're like, oh, we're like, okay, I know, like, how these things look. I know what these things look like, and Um, and so I'm going in knowing this, and if I think it's gonna be too much for me, I can stop at any time and go watch kitten videos, right? But if you like overboard with like, if you like overboard, if you do like an Ethel's Discord server where you are listing like these matryoshka nesting doll content warnings, where like I have seriously seen people on that Discord server go like content warning, problematic YouTuber, and and then like in that content warning is nested content warning contrapoints. I'm like, that is like, first off, like problematic YouTuber is just like is so vague that it says nothing. It says nothing. Like Ethan Klein is a problematic YouTuber. Honestly, the overwhelming majority of YouTubers are problematic in some way. I am not a perfect YouTuber. I am sure there are people who think I'm a problematic YouTuber, like, people who, like knew about my channel long before Ethel did. Because Ethel is trying to give me some more problems. But, I'm not afraid of this bitch. I think she's a joke that nobody who's nobody that anybody takes seriously takes Ethel seriously. And I would love for nothing more than to see every last, iota of credibility she may be struggling to hold on to dissolve. All I want to do is consolidate, like why nobody should take Ethel seriously into, into like um like a master list of things, right? Like a master list including a timeline of her, bizarre and toxic behavior on the internet, and and that's all. But it will ultimately be at her own hands because nobody is doing this to Ethel except for Ethel. Like nobody is destroying Ethel's credibility but Ethel. Nobody told Ethel to, like make a bizarre and so obscenely false accusation against Vangelina Skov, um, alleging Vangelina Skov did a plagiarism because Ethel was able to show that some screenshots from Lily Orchard's Tumblr that Ethel took because of a unique, like color coding she does in Photoshop. And, Vangelina found those screenshots at varying qualities of definition because they had been, like, taken by people on, like, the Kiwi Farms forum, which it is what it is. I know how problematic Kiwi Farms is, but honestly, I've been on the internet so long, I have seen worse people than the Kiwi Farms, crowd, right? Like like I've seen like some seriously like messed up, like dedicated to ruining someone's lives people on the internet. That's how long I've been on the internet. And like 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 Kiwi Farms are overwhelmingly amateur hour. Um a handful of Kiwi Farm users, are like us, like it's like if most Kiwi Farms users are like Cub Scout levels. Um, I know nothing about Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. One of my sisters was in Girl Scouts. Okay, so it's like people on Reddit are like Daisy Scout level. Like this is before you're like considered officially in the Girl Scouts. It's Daisy Scout level, and then there's I don't know, something else they call it. And then there's cadets. Cadets are the Girl Scouts who are like usually in their late teens, I believe, unless they've totally changed the naming format for this. Like this is what I remember from the 80s, right? So it's like, your average Reddit user in terms of like, digging up dirt on people or at least, like consolidating another internet user's history of like public, displays of being stupid. They're like a Daisy Scout level. Reddit is for Daisy Scout level shit. Kiwi farmers are like, like they've just like broken into the Girl Scouts. They are at Brownie Scout level. This is like the overwhelming majority of Kiwi farmers, right? We're like talking like minimum 75%, like probably closer to 90% of Kiwi farmers are at this Brownie Scout level of like, like wanting to, like showcase the, examples of the lol cow phenomenon, right? A handful of the remaining 10% are in this stage that I forget the name of because it was one of my sisters who was in Girl Scouts, right? It's like I'm not paying attention to this because I wasn't in Girl Scouts for a number of reasons. Um, but like there is nobody on Kiwi farms who is at cadet level. Like, like the late teens, Girl Scouts, like when you have achieved as much as you can in Girl Scouts before becoming like, like den mother or something, whatever the hell they call it, right? So it's like there are very few people on Kiwi farms, if any at all, who are at cadet level, if we're going to put this in like Girl Scout ranks, right? And nobody on Kiwi farms is at like den mother for, like wanting to, upset somebody else's life. So yeah, I am perfectly happy at like the Daisy Scout Reddit, level of Reddit for, consolidating info about, members of the lolcow phenomenon, right? I'm perfectly happy with that. That's all I care about. Like, just like find evidence of shit people have done in public and like share it just for the sake of informing others. Anyway, I don't know. I remember how I got on that topic, but I think it had something to do with like Ethel being stupid. But like when you overload people with like all the various like intricate minutia of like my first stream about the Ethelverse, I brought up that because I'm going on about the PTSD, like trigger warning stuff, right? It's like I remember being on the RPGNet forum when like the whole like trigger warning on forum posts and stuff was like just starting out. Like this would have been like around like 2008, 2007. It was like the late knots, right? So like this was just starting to take off on like like and branch out from like the fanfic community, right? And somebody on RPGNet was in like the off-topic sub forum on the RPGNet forum, browsing through the thread of like general assorted photos of people's pets. You take a photo of your cat or dog or hamster or lemur. Why do you have a lemur for a pet? That should not be legal. So like you take photos of your pet, you share them to the thread. Somebody in the thread responded to a photo of somebody's baby kittens. This person said, "Can you please trigger warning and hide, like because you could do like the expand post, tags on the old RPGNet forum. Can you please trigger warn and hide the photo of these little baby kittens because this is a trauma trigger of mine." And honestly, like, no, that's just plain fucking narcissism to make that kind of request. You knew coming into the thread that this was going to be a bunch of random photos of of people's pets. This would include the potential of scrolling by somebody's photos of little baby kittens. I don't care what kind of thing, caused you trauma around little baby kittens, but you are now making your problem everybody else's problem. You are asking for people to do like an inordinate amount of labor to cater to your shit that you got to take care of in therapy. You came into the thread knowing it was going to have like random assorted photos of people's animals. This had the potential, you knew going in, to include a photo or multiple photos of little baby kittens. Making such a request as this dumb shit did is patently narcissistic. Like it is it is asking for, like his mental health issues to be catered to an extent that it's like, why are you even opening up this thread when you know going in that this is a possible thing you could see? That traumatic for you to see a photo of little baby kittens? Like, don't open the thread. If it's that traumatic for you and you open up that thread anyway, you are going in looking to pick a fight. Like that's the only rational explanation. That or you are just that goddamn stupid. Like you could just be like the most incredibly stupid person on RPGNet that day. But like no, like you knew going into the thread that there was the possibility of seeing a photo of little baby kittens that could like carry a potential to, like trigger whatever trauma related experience vaguely alluded to that was somehow related to little baby kittens. So no, you knew going into the thread the range of photos and subjects of photos, which would be animals, an assortment of animals. Cats are a very common house pet that people have. I have 3 cats, 2 12-year-olds, and a 5.5-month-old kitten who is very big for his age, meaning he's going to be at least Nigel's size as an adult, which I kind of look forward to. I love giant cats. But anyway, like no, that is that at that point you are not asking for people to keep the mental health of yourself and most importantly others in mind. When you are doing that kind of thing, when you are making that kind of ultra specific trigger warning request, and for somebody to go through the trouble of editing their post and with the implication that you would like other people in the future to like do the hide and show more tag on the forum post for their future photos of little baby kittens, when previously everybody had just been enjoying photos of all sorts of random pets. People were looking at ferrets, people were looking at people's lizards, right? Like, but no, you knew going into the thread that there was a possibility of seeing this. If it was truly that traumatic for you, why did you open the thread? If it is, like why? Like at that point, like I said, it's no longer about it's no longer about asking people to be mindful of the mental health of the other users on the forum. At that point, it is just basic narcissism that is leading somebody like that to make such a bizarre request, because it's a thread about pet photos. There is a significant likelihood, that this will include occasionally a photo or 2 or 12 of little baby kittens. So you're going in looking for a fight. You're going in looking to be upset and to point to somebody to blame for why you're upset, when the reality is, if it is indeed that traumatic to you and you opened up that thread anyway, you are looking for a reason to be angry at that point. But like when somebody has, and that's the thing, is because like what an actual trauma trigger can be literally anything. It can be literally anything. There have been times where I have been at Kroger. There's one specific time in particular that I remember because it was in the middle of 2020 and I'm sitting on the floor crying, and like you can just tell by the people who were passing me by in the aisle and everything that this was like that I needed to pull myself together fast. And I was in the aisle at the grocery store, sitting on the floor and crying because there was like some kind of particular inflection that day. Like for some reason that day I was just extra sensitive to it. And the person on the PA, probably a shift manager, at the service desk, made an announcement, like asking for like a courtesy clerk to come do something up at the front of the store, right? but because the way they said it, the way they pronounced, like, a certain word or something, it was just enough to remind me of my own worst ex, right? And so that's what got me on the floor, sitting on the floor crying, like, in all but fetal position, and for everybody else in the store to be looking at me like I have just lost my goddamn mind. And that's basically it. It's like, because like I said, a trauma trigger can be literally anything. Like, you cannot predict a trauma trigger. Um, and you need to go to CBT, or specifically DBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, or dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a form of CBT. As in the cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm on FetLife. I know what else CBT can mean, right? So you need to go to like one of these, like therapy, courses, right? For CBT and or DBT, to help you learn how to deal with your traumas and and the potential for trauma triggers, because they can be literally anything. Like as far as I'm concerned, like, yes, there is sensitive content that could be especially upsetting or disturbing to people who have a form of PTSD, like my own CPTSD. But that's not necessarily a trauma trigger. A trauma trigger to, like when my therapist and I, is more like, like I said, like this completely unpredictable, these completely unpredictable PTSD moments that, that just like happen seemingly random, because there was just something about a thing that just happened at that moment that somehow tripped your PTSD, that somehow just like tripped up your PTSD, and now you're crying and you have no idea why. Like that's a trigger. A trigger is just like, like hairpin reactive. You don't know it's coming. It just suddenly happens. But like a content warning is fine. A content warning is fine. And like I understand that there are going to be people who use the two terms interchangeably because they don't understand, like the fine differences, which, I mean, that's fine. Like I'm not going to get too much on people's cases about it, but like the last thing you want to do for somebody who may have PTSD, any form of it, like such as my CPTSD, which is like complex post-traumatic stress disorder, meaning that, like there was like long-term situations that, that like were just like like daily levels of trauma, right? So it's like, and it's been further complicated by, like it started from child abuse, as a kid in the 80s and 90s, and like like psychological and physical violence. I mean, silver lining, no, CSA in my history, but um but that's like I said, that's just like a silver lining, comment. Because I know like a lot of people, it is CSA, which is just like, I feel for that, not from personal experience, but just because like I have a modicum of basic human compassion, right? And and it's been further complicated by, like a couple of really terrible exes. Like, worst is still the worst ex, but he's not the only terrible ex I've had, right? My CPTSD has been further complicated by 2020. Like, it's been further complicated by 3 periods of my life since the age of 17 where I've been like street homeless. So, yeah, I have some pretty complicated CPT, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, I know what can trip up a PTSD brain. So, like when you're adding like more, like when you're adding stuff that will, like even stuff like I have seen people, like on like YouTube videos or blog posts about YouTubers will do like content warning, problematic YouTuber, content warning, Jeffree Star, content warning, makeup. I'm like, kiddo, you're talking about Jeffree Star. Like, makeup is going to be a topic that comes up. You don't need to specify makeup in a commentary video or blog post about Jeffree Star, because what is he known for? He's known for makeup. Um, like, if Jeffree Star is a name that will, somehow bother you, like, and somehow, like, trip up your own personal traumas for one reason or another, then you do not need a content warning about makeup. And frankly, it's just asinine to content warning about makeup, because makeup is just like such a thing. It is so ubiquitous in day-to-day life. You cannot leave the house, assuming, well, of course, that's assuming you do leave the house, but you cannot leave the house on any day in the United States of America 2025 and go through your whole day without seeing a single person who is wearing makeup. I mean, yes, the person wearing makeup is usually a cisgender woman, fair, but it's like, makeup is such a part of day-to-day life in Western culture, and most Eastern cultures. Let's just be frank. Makeup is such a ubiquitous part of human culture. We are always trying to augment our faces. It doesn't matter what, all cultures do this. Like, this is pretty universal of human culture. All cultures find some way to augment our faces for a number of reasons. So anytime you leave the house anywhere in a human, in a human civilization community, right? You will see somebody at some point during the day who is wearing makeup. If makeup is something that bothers you that much that it may traumatize you to read a blog about makeup, or or watch a YouTube video about a problematic YouTuber who is known for makeup, then get off the goddamn internet. Check yourself into a specialized state hospital about, that addresses people with your issues, because there is no way for you to go outside and be a member of society if makeup is going to be somehow traumatizing. You need serious professional mental health assistance, ideally inpatient, because you are now requesting that, you be warned about makeup, a fundamental aspect of practically every human culture. There may be a couple odd cultures here or there that do not, that do not have people who use makeup daily for some reason or another. Like, there may be one or two, I don't know. But it's like, that's not going to be in any culture that uses the internet daily. Let's just be honest. I mean, maybe the Sentinelese don't use makeup on the daily, but, if that's the case, we'll never know, because they don't want, they don't want outsiders coming in to study them. Like, they've made this abundantly clear a number of times, often ending in fatalities. But like, the Sentinelese can do their own business. That's fine. That's how their culture works, and I am okay with that. But yeah, like no, if makeup is a topic of discussion that is going to bother you, get off the internet, go in for some serious inpatient care. That is what you need. You do not need to be bombarded with content warnings telling you that a blog post or a YouTube video or whatever is going to be discussing makeup. Because like I said, it's just so ubiquitous to human culture at this point in the year 2025 that if you need a content warning about makeup, you need more mental health help than anybody on the internet can offer you. Okay? You need serious, you need serious professional therapy, ideally on an inpatient, basis, at least for the first couple of months. That is how much you cannot function in society if you need to be warned about makeup. Okay? But like, no. Ethel will go overboard, and encourage people to go overboard with, content warning about damn near anything. Like, there are channels on Ethel's, like, Essence of Community Discord server, like where it is like practically unreadable. So like how a Discord server works is like, you've got these little like subcategories where like you can have like topic conversations. And like especially in the venting channel, it's practically unreadable because like people are not only are encouraged to like, like it is an enforced rule that don't just, like go overboard and warn people about any kind of content that anybody has voiced being upset over even once ever, no matter like how ridiculous it may seem to you. It is a serious thing to the person who expresses that they have trauma around this thing. And I'm like, no, when it's something so ubiquitous as makeup, to the point where like you are like, using these spoiler tags on Discord to, like cover up the content warnings you are issuing content warnings about. Um, and then like, your whole like discussion thing is like if you were to like print it out at like a 14-point font in a book, right? Like it would be like it would be printed out like pages and pages and pages of unreadable blacked out text that you have to click on in order to read. It is bizarre. It is downright cultish. And like I said, like what the PTSD brain does when it sees like this deluge, this overwhelming deluge. Am I using that word right? DEFI, define define deluge. Deluge, severe flood, verb to overwhelm with a flood. Okay, yeah. So when you're like putting out this deluge of content warnings before before a tsunami of of like blacked out spoiler tagged text, you are actively making the PTSD brain worse. Because when the PTSD brain sees anything more specific about this, the PTSD brain is like going into overdrive to try and protect itself. This actually makes people like far more sensitive to having their own PTSD. So it's like it is actively making PTSD triggers worse. It is undoing, like any DBT a person may have been like working on up to that point. It is actively undoing mental health help. It is actively undoing DBT therapy techniques. It is actively worsening the pre-existing PTSD triggers in a PTSD brain. All a PTSD brain needs to, prepare oneself for whatever they're about to read or watch is something just as broad as this. This is broad, but it's also like just specific enough to the most common um mental health triggers, especially like, and like, mental health triggers in a given space. So like this is like left-wing YouTube that is, trans friendly. So, like misgendering and dead naming will, be especially, um, disturbing to a lot of trans people, especially, if they're at a point in their transition where they're not yet, comfortable enough with, their day-to-day life and presenting, as their gender or otherwise living as their gender, where, like not everybody is going to get to a point where I'm at, where, like we only, like it's just like not a thing for me anymore. Like if I were to say that, like, if I so okay, like um borderline personality disorder, which is like often comorbid with CPTSD or other forms of PTSD. Of course, it's often, it's about 40% comorbid with people who also qualify for an NPD, as in narcissistic personality disorder diagnosis, right? But the other 60% of the time, it's typically comorbid with CPTSD, right? And let's see, where was I going with this? So it's like people who have a BPD diagnosis is, that's comorbid with PTSD. DBT can basically like Luxander, though I think they're going by Moss now. I forget if they changed the channel name as well. But yeah, it said preferred pronouns for Luxander, aka Moss, or I guess now known as Moss. Of course, their Twitter is still Lux Banana, so I'll just say Lux Banana on Twitter, right? Um, so like Lux Banana on Twitter, preferred pronouns are it and its. Um, I don't ask why. I don't know. I can't imagine why a human would prefer those, but I also understand that it's not for me to completely like make sense of. It's for me to acknowledge um and respect its wishes, right? I may slip into they, and I believe Lux Banana is okay with they them because like it's just easier for most people, but they're Lux's preference is it's okay. So like Lux Banana has said that it's BPD diagnosis because it is comorbid with PTSD is basically in remission because they went through the DBT, right? And they avoid spaces like, well, essence of thought spaces, right? Because, well, first off, it's definitely not a fan of Ethel, and um, and like once word was getting out about like how Ethel's Discord operates, I like that makes it less enticing to somebody who wants to like keep their BPD symptoms under control because of the DBT successfully putting like the most the most troublesome BPD plus CPT SD, or I think it said it's just got regular PTSD. But yeah, like so Lux said that, like with the DBT, the dialectical behavioral therapy, it it's BPD, so borderline personality disorder with PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, basically went into remission. Now, that does not mean it's like fully cured because like somebody whose cancer, for example, goes into remission is far more likely for the cancer to come back than somebody, at a later age than somebody of the same age who never had cancer before, right? Just like how somebody who was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and was able through a combination of diet and exercise um, and and maybe moderate use, but it is completely possible to put um, type 2 diabetes into remission through diet and exercise changes, right? So, like through lifestyle changes that like reduce empty calories and reduce carbs, reduce sugars, and be a bit more active, right? So, like somebody's type 2 diabetes can go into remission, but that person, after setting their type 2 diabetes into remission, is far more likely, if only because they had previously established bad lifestyle habits that led to type 2 diabetes in the first place. So, um, and yeah, this is probably closer to a mental health thing because obesity is a symptom of poor mental health. Like I overwhelmingly. Like there are some people who fit into a class 1 obesity BMI. So that's like the lowest level of obesity. Like, after it gets like so like there's your um there's your ideal weight BMI, which I know there's some issues with BMI, but for most people who are not athletes, it's fairly accurate. Um, with a handful of outliers, sure, but it's pretty solid most of the time. So yeah, like there's your ideal BMI range, then there's the overweight BMI range, then there's the obesity class 1, obesity class 2, obesity class 3, right? So somebody who has type 2 diabetes, because it is caused by a combination of a um a there is a minor genetic factor, but it's not really as strong because like other people can have that same genetic factor for type 2, which isn't quite the same as the genetic factor for type 1. And type 1 is the one that you are born with. It is diagnosed fairly early in one's life, usually like very young childhood. Hello, Bran. Okay. Want my toes? Want to get my toes? Want to get my toes? Kitty cat wants my toes. Kitty cat wants my toes. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, but yeah, like as people say, genetics may load the barrel, but um, but it's lifestyle that pulls the trigger for whether or not somebody is going to develop type 2 diabetes. So, yeah, you can send type 2 diabetes into remission by adjusting by adjusting your lifestyle to, like eat healthier and be more active, right? Okay, good. So, but because of the mental health factor that, that overwhelmingly leads to type 2 diabetes, right? You are more likely to slip back into those old habits that caused the type 2 diabetes in the first place. So, yeah, um so PTSD triggers kind of work like that. Like you can put them into remission, but if you end up surrounding yourself by people who do things that have been psychologically proven to make it worse for people with PTSD. So like PTSD is not ever going to completely go away. There are still going to be like some reactions that just come to you a bit more. Yeah, I don't want to say naturally because it is a condition that is caused by environmental factors. But like by the way that those traumatic experiences rewire your brain, like it does, end up becoming a more natural response. So it's like like I said, PTSD never completely goes away. The most problematic aspects of it can go into remission, but you are more likely to, undo all the DBT that put your PTSD into remission if you surround yourself in, like if you are actively participating in places even on the internet, like Ethel Thurston's The Essence of Thought Discord server. This is actively making people worse. And Ethel has every reason to know this. She has every reason to know that the psychological research into how this shit works actively makes people worse. It actively pulls PTSD, like the most problematic aspects of PTSD, it will pull those symptoms out of remission if somebody had already if somebody had already achieved remission through DBT, right? It will pull those symptoms out of remission. It will, make the other symptoms especially worse. So yeah, our guy Oz, let me hover over his because like the way that my thing is set up, I can't read this. Oh wait, he's got so okay. Um Ozzy Tovel here, the guy who did this video 7 months ago thereabouts. Um Oh yeah, I can read my comments later. I did leave a couple comments. So yeah, like Ozzy Tovel here, you know, these these content warnings that he's got here, this is fine. This is all a PTSD affected brain is going to need. Like this is the max that a PTSD affected brain is going to need. Anything more specific than that just like trips PTSD brain into being hyper sensitive to any else that may be, that may cause a traumatic, a traumatic PTSD flashback kind of episode in our brains. Because like now you're just like looking at like everything that could bother, or upset or disturb or even trigger a PTSD episode in not only yourself but anybody else. And because like humans are, fundamentally social creatures, we like to look out for others. So, like it overwhelms a PTSD brain to be any more specific than this. This is fine. Like, like I mean, I would personally probably like word this a bit differently and like maybe say like mild transphobia or or um or or um or or something, I don't know, like I don't know. If memory serves, there's a clip that references Lily Orchard before she came out as trans. So I guess that would be more. I think that would be like more easily, um, 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 um more easily um explained as dead naming. I don't know. Of course, it might also fall into a category of like mild transphobia, but like it's like one of those situations where it's just so specific. It's still best to make it's so specific, but it's still best to make up like a very broad. It's still best to like word it very broadly like this, because like this like kind of subconsciously reminds the PTSD brain that yeah, our triggers can be anything. Um it can be broad, it can be specific, but if we keep in mind that you know it that it's being worded broadly like this, that kind of reaffirms that you know that this is like kind of at least the way that I think about it when I use some of the like I don't know, like I was offered a proper DBT class by one of my more recent therapists, but the time of the day it was being done in would have been impossible for me to attend because like I would have been like asleep for maybe 3 hours before I got on a bus to go to the other side of town for that class, right? So, like, I don't know, like without severely disrupting um my usual schedule, it would have been impossible to get to. So, like, I do look up like how to like work in DBT skills like outside of like a course like that. Just because like it's easier for me to do it that way. So it's like the way I frame it is like this is a human experience. This is another human experience. This is a human experience that may be more specific to trans people, but it is a human experience. Like even if like when I was working as a grocery store cashier, like when my back is still okay with me working a punch clock, right? Um, I would occasionally misgender people just because, like, in the middle of in the middle of a rush hour at a grocery store, so it's like usually around like 7 p.m. So yeah, like in the middle of that time at a grocery store, sometimes you're just going on autopilot and you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. Yeah, at least not as well as you'd like to anyway. And so, like, if a guy has long hair and he's clearly a guy and not like a trans woman who's trying her best, right? Because I will be frank, when you're working a customer service job like a grocery store cashier, you will you will start to notice that there are ways that that like I said, like a trans woman who's just trying her best will present herself over a gender non-conforming guy. It's not like like nobody ever gets perfect at guessing that distinction all the time, right? But you do notice some of these tendencies, right? So yeah, like there have been times where like an especially butch woman was coming through my grocery aisle, and I all I saw was like the buzz cut hair, but I did not notice that like her her chesticles are not being bound, right? So but like I see the buzz cut and I'm just like whipping through her purchases on the thing, and I say your total is 22.95, sir. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I just saw out of the corner of my eye. I apologize. And like the one or two times that happened, they both seem to be pretty good humored about it, right? But yeah, so it's like if you have enough experience like that, like that like even like misgendering is a very human experience. So like I said, like the way that I've learned to adapt these, kind of things to understanding like my own PTSD is just like when it's done as vague as this, but still like relatively specific, it's like I can remind myself, like, even though this is not a part of my own PTSD experience, but like abuse, misgendering, dead naming, those are also parts of my PTSD experience. And I can remind myself that these are human experiences that, like just because I've experienced trauma to a degree that has hi that has given me a trauma disorder, like um that doesn't mean that I don't belong in the human experience, right? It's like that's kind of like how I work it out in my head when I see stuff like this. It's like, okay, human experience that I share, human experience I don't share, but you know, it's a human experience. Another human experience that I have experienced. Another human experience that I've experienced, right? Okay. Like I said, this is all a PTSD brain needs. When you get more specific than that, you are triggering the neurons in the PTSD brain that wants to be constantly hyper vigilant about, potential trauma triggers of one's own and, maybe other people's. And it's just, it just goes into hyperdrive. It makes things worse. But the way Ozzy here has done it, absolutely perfect. I'm gonna stop, like rambling on. I am late found before I want to make at least one more round on this scarf before Lucifer, aka Argyle Dinosaur, comes to pick me up for the history podcaster doing his lecture tour tomorrow that we're both going to see out in Ann Arbor and I think get some lunch or something. All right.
Once upon a time, there was a mighty crusader named Ethel. She was a brave and virtuous hero who fought for justice and truth. While on her travels, she came upon the plight of thousands. The evil witch, Lily, was luring children to their doom with promises of safety and healing. Soon, these children found themselves in a web spun by the evil witch. Their innocence was being drained, for that's where...
I like the way he introduces this video that he's done about Ethel because it reminds me of a DM in a D&D game I used to be in, like IRL. Was it late 90s or was it late 90s or was it early mid noughts? I don't remember, but like I said, this is kind of like reminding me of like a really good DM I had in a Dungeons and Dragons game I was in ages and ages ago at this point. Well, okay, 2 decades ago at this point, minimum 2 decades ago at this point. God damn it, stop reminding myself I'm fucking old.
Lily gets her power from. They had nowhere to run. Ethel sprang into action, and with her mighty hammer, she beat the evil witch Lily relentlessly upon the head. But Lily was a clever illusionist. She sat up.
I will admit, I do kind of get a chuckle at the mental image of, like Ethel, like beating Lily Orchard over the head with some kind of blunt weapon. It does give me a chuckle because, like, I'm not gonna say that anybody's I'm not gonna say that CSA is a worse form of abuse than psychological abuse because no, it's not a contest to see who is more abused. Um, Abuse is it's a human experience that like some deal with more of it than others, and we have to learn how to make it through that. But it's like I understand why people are especially sensitive to CSA because like human beings want to look out for kids, like even if those kids are like like just barely minors, like we're talking teenagers, like we're not and Lily Orchard does fixate on teenagers, so but like they're still kids, and like I said, like human beings just kind of have this urge to want to at least look out for, if not, you know, be vigilant in protecting kids. So yeah, the mental image of Ethel, like, you know, like maiming Lily Orchard with a blunt object over the head just does kind of give me a chuckle. Um, but then again, like it's not like a chuckle that would be unique to a mental image of Ethel in specific doing it. Like Xander Hall, who is a shittier person than, you know, I even um he's also like not disturbingly fixated on teenagers. So yeah, it would be funny, and it would be funny to, you know, think of him bonking Lily Orchard over the head with a blunt object that could incapacitate her, even if briefly. That's a funny mental image. Now, do I want to see that in real life? No, no, because I don't like to see people getting hurt. At the same time, though, I do understand why some people would want to see that, because due to their own experiences, it can be cathartic to see that happening to somebody who they feel deserves it.
Upon the hill and laughed as the mighty hero beat one of her drained victims upon the head. Lily's other victims tried to save their comrade, but Ethel, steadfast in her own virtues, ignored them. They were all liars and rape apologists after all.
Indeed, it's time for Ethel Thurston to get a reality check.
It is necessary for me to discuss my history with Ethel before I talk about anything else. Unfortunately, this means I also need to talk about Lily Orchard and Vosh. I started watching Lily Orchard back in the ancient days of 2017. Believe it or don't, she was actually my first introduction to lefty-adjacent content.
Which, as I already said, like, Lily Orchard is a terrible introduction to lefty-adjacent content. Like, if you listen to Lily Orchard and take her seriously, like, which means you're probably a teenager who doesn't know any better yet, and you think this is what left-wing ideals looks like, you're gonna have to unlearn a lot of shit after you finally outgrow Lily Orchard.
I was on a steady content diet of Monkey Jones, Emplemon, and a bunch of YouTube poopers. Lily's content led me to H Bomber Guy, which led me to Sean, Three Arrows, ContraPoints, and eventually Vosh. I started watching Vosh pretty early on in his career, back in 2019. I mostly watched his responses to PragerU and other right-wing channels. I stopped standing Vosh after his response to Lily Orchard. Simply put, I liked Lily better than I liked Vosh. Honestly, I'm more than a little ashamed about this because his response to Lily came after his non-apology for sexual harassment, where he blamed his actions on autism. I should have dropped him after that. I stopped standing Lily because of Ethel's video. Lily Orchard encouraged a friend to groom a minor. Keep this in mind for later, it's important. Finally, I started Essence of Thought during their fight with Rationality Rules. I was quite well edited and robustly sourced. I very quickly grew to trust Essence of Thought. Dare I say, Ethel was basically my hero after a while. I genuinely wanted to be like how I thought she was, and I faced a—
And we're not going to hold that against him. We all do stupid shit when we don't know any better. We all think stupid shit when we don't know any better. I mean, that's why it's called not knowing any better, right? So, you know, I mean, and yeah, and I'll admit, there was a time where I took Ethel a little bit more seriously than I do now. But I don't know, I think I was already old enough to see through some of her BS tactics. um, like I think I was already older and more experienced to see through some of this shit than a lot of her overwhelmingly like teenage and young 20s audience does. So like I just think that it's a thing. Like when you get a little bit older and more experienced, you usually outgrow Ethel. And like I said, well, there was a time I took her a little bit more seriously. I never thought, she was, like this, like grand, thought leader of left wing YouTube. I thought she had some good ideas that could stand to be refined, and I don't know why she would like put out, some like very haphazard videos that she has been, other than just, well, it's easier and quicker. But I did for a time at least think that she meant well. That she went through, that she had, good intentions in what she was doing, even if she seemed a bit, like naive at best and potentially toxic at worst. I did think that, like, even people who behave, toxically can have good intentions, but it's usually because like they're very traumatized people um who need help with bettering themselves, to cope with the trauma that they experienced, right?
A lot of abuse throughout my life, and it was nice seeing someone who was willing to stand up for people like me. It really is too bad she just basically became another abuser, in my eyes. I always had a degree of fear about her. At the time, I figured it was because I was so used to people mistreating me that I expect it from everyone, but in hindsight, I think I was just picking up on some signs that Ethel was toxic in much the same way as people who've abused me before. Back in 20...
I found it really easy to pick up on the ways that Ethel behaves toxically and abusively on, even online, right? Like, I don't know about her IRL situation. I don't want to know. All I have to say about Ethel's, offline life is I really hope the essence of spouse, Udita, which, Ethel's wife, finds it in herself to recognize that she deserves somebody, just better for her than Ethel, and has the courage to leave, thus like expiring Ethel's spousal visa, etc., etc., etc. Because, like I said, like my only thoughts about Ethel's personal life is I hope Udita finds a way out of this relationship, because on the internet, we are able to curate our public persona a lot more than we do IRL. We usually put forth a better face online than, than our offline life would than on our offline life, right? Like we're not so easy to curate our 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 presence, offline. So if this is what Ethel is putting forth online, statistically, her offline antics are probably worse, statistically speaking, right? I mean, she could be an outlier. Maybe she just uses the internet to, like, get out all of her frustration. Like, that doesn't mean she's not still being abusive to the people in her online circles, like on Discord and Twitter and all that, right? She could still, like even if she is using, the internet as a means to be abusive, but somehow this doesn't happen offline, like she still needs some serious therapy. But yeah, like I said, like online people usually present a more palatable version of ourselves. So, statistically speaking, like I said, I just the extent of the extent of my interest in Ethel's offline life is I really hope Udita finds a way out. Like I know very little about Udita that has not been, and everything I do know has been previously shared, usually by Ethel online, publicly, in public online spaces, whether it's information that Ethel, scripts out in one of her videos or something, or or if it's like something mentioned in a tweet or something like that. It's like we know that Udita, we know that her first name is Udita. Actually, somebody sent me an article on the University of Surrey website that Udita wrote. That's like, I think it's got her last name. Somebody sent this to me and it was just like, oh, if you really want, I'm like, no, I do not really want like personal information about Ethel. Like, I was shit posting, like, when I did that October 2023 post, it was October 2023. Like I was shit posting. I was shit posting. I was living in a tent just to like punctuate how much I was shit posting, right? So I was like, I mean, yeah, I think it would be funny to learn that Ethel's middle name begins with O because she seems kind of obsessed with those initials. Um, but I don't actually care. Like, I think it's funny. I think if I was correct in her middle initial being O, I think that would be especially funny because it's just so predictable given like other things you can notice about her online behavior. You know, um, but I don't care. I don't care about her offline life. Why would I? Like her offline life does not, affect me and people in the social circles I run in online, online or off because I don't live in goddamn India. But, like based on like I said, like what is established about Udita, like that is her forename. She's married to Ethel. I'm sure she has her reasons. Um, she's a she's a human rights or civil rights. I forget like I don't remember if there's a distinction between the two, but she's like she works in human rights as an attorney. She like works at a law firm in India that deals in human rights cases. I am under the impression um, that she um, also does human rights related volunteer work as a victim advocate. So like, she's got her salaried position at the law firm that does human rights cases, and she probably volunteers time as a victim advocate. So like in addition to her salary as a human rights attorney. And that's about it. That's about it. I mean, I know just because of like something, that was like being chatted about in DMs that she also like um 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 messaged one of the people I know from pagan internet circles about and asked that person about heathen wedding ceremonies, just like just like something that she seemed, at least to this person at the time, that she seemed genuinely curious about, which like that shows me that she's genuinely curious about people, that like her interest in human rights law and is coming from a place of like genuine interest in other people and compassion for other people, because like there was no reason for her to like ask about this. It's like she was already married. She just seemed genuinely curious. Like, and it probably like went in that, and this curiosity was probably sparked by like some Twitter conversation she noticed. um I didn't ask for details about like, why she seems to just ask, this acquaintance of mine about that. But like I said, like just like, with the very brief summary of what my pagan acquaintance told me about the time they were DM'd on Twitter by Udita, it just seemed like she was like she just had a curiosity about this, and she was just like asking about this. It's like I said, like just a point of genuine human curiosity about other humans. So that suggests to me that she is probably a very compassionate person. So her interest in human rights law comes from a very genuinely compassionate place. And based on how Ethel conducts herself online, I do not see that same degree of compassion and human curiosity coming from Ethel, which like does make me a little bit concerned for Udita when like this seems to be a point that they do not have common ground on that could be um that could open up Udita for abuse just based on my knowledge of how psychological abuse works as both, like a victim of psychological abuse and a well-read layperson, right? So it's like I'm not a professional, but I do, I am curious into like how this works because like psychological abuse has affected me, and I kind of like I'm just like curious how it affects other people and like what the common threads are with this, right? So like I said, like that is the extent of my concern about Ethel's offline life. Is I'm very concerned for Udita and her mental health in that relationship, and I hope she finds a way out. And that's about it. Like I said, like I'm not genuinely curious about finding out her middle name. I just think if it ever came up, like if it was ever like made public one of these days and it begins with the letter O, I think that would be hilarious. I really do. I really do. And if the person who, somehow makes that public, unless it's Ethel, I might drop a $5 in their Ko-Fi tip jar, but like just like it's not because it's anything I asked for. It's just because I got a good chuckle. Like that's the extent of my interest in Ethel's middle name. It's like I think it would be really fucking funny if she did in fact give herself a middle name that begins with the letter O because she seems that like fixated on the EOT initialism. Like I think it would be funny and just like how predictable it was that you know I was able to sniff that out somehow. Like it would just be funny. I just think it would be funny. Not funny because there's a punchline, but funny because like somebody who thinks she's smarter than she actually is so predictable.
2021, I was frolicking on Twitter when I found a post by the account ShitVosh. It showed a clip of Vosh saying that black people were better off in slavery than they were in Africa. There were a few things
we did go over this part like in the like for restream borked tonight's stream, and I had to restart, but so yeah, like that's a clip that was taken wildly out of context.
Stood out to me about this clip. It was only 7 seconds long. It ended in the middle of a sentence. I'm pretty sure Vosh was counting on his fingers when he said it. I had my doubts that this was actually an example of Vosh's racism. I don't have the clip, nor do I have the extended version that Ethel ignored. I've been searching for it, but with no luck. If you, the viewer, knows where to find it, please give it to me. I retweeted the clip, noting that Vosh's racism is usually a...
If Best X were still awake right now, and I know he's asleep, I know, like, he's either asleep or so engrossed in a video game before bed that it's like, or, no, it's not, he reads before bed. So yeah, like, he's either already asleep or he's so engrossed in a book before bed, he might as well be asleep, because he'll be dead to the world in about half an hour. But yeah, if I might want to ask, because Best X is able to find things on search engines that, like even basic search engines like Google, right? He can find stuff online that that just seems like so much stranger and more specific than the internet that the rest of us know about. If anybody could find that extended clip, Best X could.
A little more subtle than this, and I asked for context. Then I continued making my post into a thread. I talked about how misinformation like this is dangerous and it gives Vosh and to support their claims people only hate him because of out-of-context clips. In the eyes of the simple Voshite, all critics have Vosh derangement syndrome. I have had many Voshlings come after me for being critical of God Emperor Vosh, so yeah, I wanted people to be more careful about what information they were sharing online. I also told people to vet and reference their sources better for the sake of defense, and to check out Essence of Thought's channel and pay attention to how they cited video sources. I used to have the screenshots of this.
As I said before the stream got borked, I do appreciate the fact that Ethel at least, puts a whole lot of footnotes in the video that, so like the footnote number that is going to reference to the source list on the Google Docs transcripts she uploads with all her videos. And I think she also does the source list, or at least a version of the source list, in the description box of a video. So that's nice. That's nice to have somebody meticulously cite sources that they are using to at least justify a statement that they're making in a video. On the other hand, a lot of Ethel's sources do not support the things she says they do. Some of them are especially wild stretches in logic to come anywhere in the vicinity of supporting what she says they do. So this is a way that she manipulates her audience, is she will bombard people with this massive source list, but a significant number of these numbered source, of the sources that she includes in this master list of reference numbers, footnotes. A significant number of them, let's say on average 25% of them, so a very significant number of them do not say or cannot be seen in a manner that would rationally support the statement she's making in the video. So she's relying on people to not go and check the sources that she's using, to justify her statements in the video. This is a manipulation tactic. She is hoping that people will just be so overwhelmed by the source list, being so, being at least having such a number of sources cited, for the statements she makes in her video, that that people will just assume that it all backs up what she says it does. She relies on people being unwilling or to go and verify the sources themselves, and who will just take her word for it. Again, this is a manipulation tactic of pathological narcissists.
Thread, but the device they were on was stolen from me. I assume Ethel has them, but I don't know for sure.
I assume Ethel has her own screenshots. Crap.
Is better for the sake of defense, and to check out Essence of Thought's channel and pay attention to how they cited videos of this thread, but the device they were on was stolen from me. I assume Ethel has them, but
okay, so his note, his text note imposed over the video says, I assume Ethel has her own screenshots. I don't want her clipping this and claiming I accused her of stealing the device. So yeah, the device he had the screenshots on was lost or stolen by somebody, right? By somebody. Probably, in North America, judging by his accent, it sounds either like Midwest Great Lakes or Canadian, right? So clearly he's in a country where Ethel does not live. Ethel lives in India. This guy lives somewhere in North America. Like I said, accent sounds either, like Great Lakes Midwestern, like probably Minnesota or Wisconsin, or Canada, right?
but I don't know for sure. I'm glad you
I
asked.
do not like
First,
Canada.
someone responded with a 40-second version of the clip I was talking about. It turns out that Vosh was listing off white supremacist arguments he thought were stupid. After that, shit Voshites say deleted their post. Wow, I am loving these questions. I briefly rejoined Twitter last year. During this time, I went and found Ethel's response.
I don't want to read that again.
As seen here. Well, she starts off by talking down to me the way an abuser talks to a child. She changed the topic from racism to pedophilia. She brought up racism as an afterthought alongside ableism and transphobia. Keep in mind, this is a conversation about racism.
Yeah, Ethel does this a lot. And this is another manipulation tactic. This is another established manipulation tactic of pathological narcissists.
She told me I was wrong about why citing sources is important without an actual correction. She admitted she didn't know what she was actually responding to, and she told me I'm defending a pro-child raping piece of shit. She basically told me that correcting misinformation about racism is... This isn't to say that Ethel was wholly wrong, though.
Yeah.
She said
I linked the full video in the chat box. If you want to go read the tweets yourself. I read the tweets before the stream tonight got borked. About an hour and a half ago. Oh, yeah, about an hour and a half ago. And I've read the tweets that he screenshotted for his video previously, like before tonight's streaming section. Checking chat. Cherryberry says, "Still have TV Guide come to the house." Oh, that's right. They well, it's not exactly like the TV Guide magazine. Like, I know it technically still exists, and they've got the crossword puzzles and all that in there too. But it's a very different magazine than what it once was, which does kind of sadden me. And yeah, I was going off about an hour ago. Yeah, about an hour and a half ago about how Michael Jackson was, like there's no evidence against Michael Jackson specifically, but like I said, I do think that that Robson and Safechuck, at least one of them, though potentially both. Just because I like one of them, I find one of them like a more sympathetic potential victim than I do the other one, doesn't mean the other one isn't also a victim. He's just a victim I don't like. Like, he comes off a little bit like sleazy to me, and I don't mean that I think he's victimizing others in the way he's accused Jackson of. I think he knows he's going to get paid for this, and he doesn't care if this is, if this is hinted at, right? Like, he just, I don't know, he seems a little bit smarmy, a little bit sleazy. I don't like him. That doesn't mean he's not necessarily a victim, or that doesn't mean he's necessarily not a victim. If he is an actual CSA victim, he's an imperfect one who I don't personally like, but the other one, I do find him but like I said, the accusations he's making do not sound specific to Michael Jackson. I think he was in, I think the one I find a little bit more sympathetic was in a bind where, he was also going bankrupt and needed the cash, and he wanted to talk about his experience with CSA as a aspiring child actor in the Los Angeles area at the time, and because he's facing bankruptcy, he is feeling a little bit desperate and is trying to justify to himself, like why he's accusing Michael Jackson, who was already dead at least a decade at the time of the Leaving Neverland movie. Um, but yeah, like there's okay. Oh, Trash Panda's here. Happy New Year to you too. Yay, another year of Gotham is then. Why are you reading it? LOL, other people. Yeah, I don't understand hate watching it, but it's a thing. Some people do it. I don't get it. It it just upsets me a bit. So like I avoid watching channels run by people I don't like. That's what makes sense to me.
Out to establish a boundary, but she could have done so without calling me a child rape apologist. Especially when you consider I hadn't said anything about sexual abuse of any kind.
Yeah.
Her response caused me to melt down. I'm talking like a full-blown autistic meltdown, self-harm at all. Unfortunately, I was on Twitter during this meltdown, and I said a few things to Ethel. I'm not going to talk about what I said, but if Ethel has screenshots, don't worry, she'll share them. Just note that there is a fair amount.
I'm not giving her permission, but if she has them, she'll share them anyway, like the screenshots of what he said on Twitter during, a mental health breakdown.
Of name calling, and I told Ethel to never talk to me again at place. Ethel promptly and correctly blocked me. This pulled me out of my meltdown, and I went ahead and issued apologies. Levi, who hadn't blocked me, was tagged in one of them. I asked Levi to check in on Ethel and make sure she was okay. I was racked with guilt over this.
Which is an admirable thing for, this Aussie guy to do, to, just inquire and just, hey, just make sure she's okay, and that's, if I were in his position at that time and considering how he regarded Ethel at that time up until that point, I can see myself, asking the same thing, or at least, saying the same thing to Levi, just hey, just make sure she's okay. We were both getting heated, and I just, she can keep me blocked, whatever, just as long as she's doing okay, that's the important thing, right? Shit, I've asked, this of people on old LaVey Satanist forums, right? Just arguments on forums can get heated, so it's just hey, I just want to. I'm just a couple hours later, we've had some time to cool off. I send a direct message and I'm hey, I just want to make sure that you're doing okay, because the argument was pretty heated, and as long as you're fine, I'm cool, continuing to talk to you on the forum. And most of the time, I mean, to be fair, it was LaVey fan kids 20 years ago on the internet, and it was still a mix of the crypto fascist kind of Satanists, and one of the people that I saw split off, onto his own LaVey Satanist kind of um special interest, offshoot, forum, which was called Satanic Reds, which was anarcho-communist, socialist, syndicalist, people, left-wing Satanism, right?
About 3 days later, if memory serves me correctly, Levi posted this.
Oh!
Given...
Oh, God. Content warning, pedophilia, harassment, people going out of their way to harass a survivor of CSA only to insist the survivor is the one who has something wrong with them is actually not surprising. Most people think that seeing CSA called out is somehow worse than CSA. This is nonsense! And honestly, there's no reason to do a content warning on this. There was no reason to do a content warning on this because, the topic is only being alluded to. It's only being alluded to. This is... and like there is no harassment, you know, even discussed in this tweet. This is a complete nonsense tweet. This this makes no sense. And like I said, like it's issuing like a superfluous content for pedophilia because it's barely being alluded to, and there is no harassment being described in this tweet. So this has no place here. So this is what I'm talking about with like how the essence of thought Discord community will just like overindulge in content warnings about things, and this is a manipulation tactic. This is something that Ethel is kind of good, like not as good as Lily Orchard is, about um like alluding to and like implying, things that she wants to see out of people, but not actually like, saying the exact thing she wants people to do, right? Um, so like we know that she approves of people issuing completely superfluous and even nonsensical content warnings about anything and everything that they talk about on that forum. And this, of course, bleeds into other forms of social media. I say forum, I meant like Discord server, right? And this is a manipulation tactic to put people who have, like trauma disorders on edge about, about their about trauma, right? Like this is a means to intentionally put people with trauma disorders on edge and constantly on edge. And when somebody is that anxious, they can be easy to manipulate. Like it's actively making the condition worse.
And how it lined up with what happened, I assumed he was referring to me, but I can't verify if he was or not. I felt like they were accusing me of playing the victim while I was actively apologizing. Last year, something happened.
And that is another like manipulation tactic that Ethel and her little cultish Discord server are fond of doing, is like that kind of thing. Okay, and he says like so he says last year, and this video was it says it's about 7 months old, so May or June of 2024. So he's saying this was in November of 2022, so rather than sometime in 2023, right? Okay.
Happened, which convinced me that I was basically evil. I don't really want to talk about what, but it involved gaslighting. I decided to serve me correctly, and I assumed he was referring to me, but I can't verify if he was or not. I felt like they were accusing me of playing the victim while I was actively apologizing. Last year, something happened which convinced me that I was basically evil. I don't really want to talk about what, but it involved gaslighting. I decided to forgive Ethel and Levi and try to rejoin their community. I watched their Vosh vs. Me Too video and was planning on watching their victim testimony videos when I noticed that one of their latest uploads was accusing Lily Orchard of racism. I was all like, holy shit, what's going on here? And that pretty much brings us up to date. That segment on Lily's was so bad that it made me reconsider.
The Crimson Ender video about how Lily Orchard is a fake leftist is like goes into some really, good detail about exactly how and why it is fair to call Lily Orchard Ethel kind of like she gets some broad points correct, but she does not address it with the with the seriousness that it deserves. It's just like her usual hyperbole and um, intentionally making the situation more tense and like hoping to get the audience extra defensive about this than is necessary because if somebody's especially anxious, they can be easier to manipulate.
Why I hated Lily Orchard. We'll be coming back to that in Chapter 4. Essence of Thought has a tendency to try and paint people who they disagree with as the worst possible types of people. As we saw in the last chapter, this is even the case when they don't know what, if anything, we disagree on. I'm not the only person she's done this to. Ephraim and Tater and Yopalgal responded to Essence of Thought's victim testimony videos. Honestly, I don't think either of their responses are particularly good. Their response to the first victim testimony was pretty bad, if I'm being completely honest, and I think Ephraim and Yopalgal might actually agree with that last statement. Ephraim would follow up his first video by posting on Twitter about reaching 420 subscribers, because, the stoner number is funny. Ethel responded to this by calling him a rape apologist and implied he only responded to her for clout. Now, Ephraim did cast doubt onto Glade's testimony. He did this both in the video and his argument with Ethel. For those of you wondering, Glade is the first victim. Personally, I think the testimonials are the only things in Ethel's
The testimonials are only a small part of Ethel's video. They act as a jumping off point for everything else she discussed. Which I think Courtney would agree on that assessment, that it's basically exploiting the victim testimonies for Ethel's hyperbole that at least really toes the line of defamation, because as pointed out in the oh gosh, it's one of the videos I was looking at the other day. Yeah, the Ephraimentator. So yeah, like this video and the earlier one of the two of these. So there's another Ephraimentator. Really? Okay. So there's two Ephraimentator videos discussing Ethel's videos on Lily Orchard. And they like they're also being a bit hyperbolic and stuff, but they're pointing out that the logic Ethel is using to say that this thing or that thing or the other thing means what she says it means, like this action of Lily Orchard, where yeah, if you're familiar enough with how Lily Orchard operates, it can be easy to see that this is one of Lily Orchard's manipulation tactics. But if this was something presented in a court of law, there is enough reasonable doubt to call this defamation, right? Like this is a bit of a stretch. So like that's what the Ephraimentator was going on about. That was kind of pissing me off a little bit to rewatch it. But like, because it's a thing where Ethel has a point, but again, you can only really see that point if you're familiar enough with how Lily Orchard operates. So it's like it's not something that would hold up in it's not something that would hold up in court.
Victim testimony videos that are worth actually watching. Anyway, Ephraim would go on to apologize for what he said about Glade's testimony in his response to the second victim testimony video. I do understand and respect if Glade doesn't want to accept that apology, though. After a bit of back and forth between Ethel and Ephraim, Ethel tweeted out that Ephraim and Yopalgal want victims to suffer and that they enjoy it, which is a pretty bold claim.
And yet, when called out on how they spread pseudoscience to try and discredit said victim testimony, they repeat the claim that victim testimony isn't evidence upon itself. It never ends. It's No, that's not sea lioning! Do you know what these words mean? These people want victims of sexual violence to suffer. They enjoy it. I have to do it in the Ethel voice.
For them to make, if you ask me. Someone on Twitter, whom I'll be referring to as Coda, responded to this, saying that what Ethel said may
the screenshot you're seeing is from Levi. I know how much they hate when people use screenshots they take.
be triggering to some people. Keep in mind that this is being directed, in part, at a survivor of sexual abuse. Ethel and Levi put a master plan into action. This attack would not be allowed to stand. I don't have a screenshot for this because I was more interested in Levi's shit response, but Ethel stalked Coda's Twitter for something they could bring up instead of listening to what they had to say. What she found was that Coda had said the N-word or something. Called out, I think it's pretty noteworthy that Ethel only called it out to distract from what she'd done wrong. Levi, on the other hand,
which is another way I can say confidently that Ethel is a racist. Like, she'd already, flew, wildly derailed a convo about, Vaush and his alleged instances of racism to, ramble on about CSA. In this incident, she's using, a racist action someone did, dropping an N-bomb on Twitter, as a means to distract from the, complete shenanigans that Ethel and Levi are pulling. Like, she will use racism as a topic to advance her own intentions that have nothing to do with racism.
Responded to Coda's tweet directly, but only to talk about how twat means vulva. Sure enough, this is calling out hypocrisy, but
wait. Talks about what's appropriate and potentially triggering to say to survive. Oh my god. Also calls a CSA survivor a twat, a word meaning vulva. Okay, it's also a common pejorative. And again, I say, if something so common to one's culture is something one knows to be potentially triggering of their own trauma disorder, then they need inpatient care before they can reintegrate into society.
But once again, notice how it doesn't actually dispute Coda's actual point. If a murderer stands up on a podium and says murder is wrong, does the hypocrisy invalidate his statement? Is murder suddenly okay because a murderer said it was wrong? What this tells me is that Ethel and Levi knew they were wrong in this situation, or that they didn't know how to contend with Coda's actual point. If that wasn't the case, the racism or the word twat would have been brought up after a proper rebuttal. They would have attempted to defend their claims. We call this one never play defense.
This isn't about conversation. No, this is about...
Okay, here's a note where Ozzy says, I want you to watch the alt-right playbook and keep essence of thought in mind while you do so. Specifically, control the conversation, never play defense, The ship of Theseus, you go high, we go low, the slow breakup, you can't get snakes from chicken eggs, and the reverse Gish Gallop. Um, I'm trying to think of like what I want to showcase in next week's Thurston Thursdays. Um,
Boxes. When you say something cogent that you might start making sense, they need a reason not to listen to you. So they reach for a box to stick you in. Dishonest feminism, fake progressivism, daddy issue liberalism. No one in those boxes is worth listening to, which means as long as they've got you in one, they're not at risk of having their minds changed. This whole thing isn't even an argument with you. Not really. They're presenting themselves with arguments for why they don't have to listen to you.
Now, Coda saying the N-word was indefensible, but it was irrelevant to what they said to Ethel. Instead of addressing what Coda said, they used this handy box. Patchwork Heart was also critical of Ethel and Levi around this time. Specifically, he disagreed with how they characterized Lily's behavior as grooming. Patch felt priming and indoctrination were better terms to use. In his conversation with Glade, he noted his concern that some bad actors may use poor word choice to discredit them. Glade said,
Oh, crap. Correction, something about a stream.
Priming and indoctrination were better terms to use.
Okay, redacted. Yeah, my ex is 9 years older than me and started dating me when I was 15. Patrick Hart, he, they, it. Ugh, ew, gross. Redacted. Yep. Redacted. And she kinda did that, made me trust her by showing to be a safe haven for abused people and then abused me. Sounds like how an essence of discord operates, huh? Patrick Hart, that's not the same. Redacted. I get what you're saying, though. Patrick Hart, did she do daily private calls, tell you you're mature for your age, ask you to do things as a friend for her, went about her sex life to you direct? Oh, I think like, went on about her sex life to you directly? Redacted. Fair. So it's like, yeah, like it's a different manipulation tactic than abuse grooming, especially for CSA. So I mean that doesn't mean it's not dangerous. It's just presenting a different kind of danger.
Use. In his conversation with Glade, he noted his concern that some bad actors may
correction, he said this in his stream, so Patrick, stream, not to Glade. Okay. Patrick Hart, to keep your friendship secret from her partners, redacted. Honestly, the thing people have been bringing up is like expecting me to have proof I said I'm 17 in the Discord. Okay. Patrick Hart, she did abuse you, flashing you like that. Oh, okay. Redacted is Glade. We're just like redacting his username. Okay, yeah. Wait. I'll go with their username. I forget already. Constantly exposing you to adult content without consent. That is abusive regardless of age. You didn't consent to that. But grooming is about private interactions. Right, yeah. It's like about like, trying to establish a connection to, like basically like make a person feel safe, and then like, like not even pull the wool out from under them, but to like, and to the point, so they suddenly, maybe it is about like, like we can say like it's like, like giving them this false sense of safety and security, so that like when you finally like pull the rug out from under them, it's like they don't realize how badly they've been, like psychologically abused until they're already in the thick of it, right? Okay, yeah. Grooming is about private interactions, DMs, calls, gifts, in-person interactions in some cases. What she did is abusive regardless of the age of the victims, which again, I agree. It's like priming, normalizing, toxic behaviors to, younger people who don't know any better. Many of whom are already, like victims of abuse who are looking for a safe space. And again, like this is how Ethel's Discord server operates just as much as it's how Lily Orchard's Discord server operates. They just like the main difference is Ethel has so thoroughly desexed her public persona that it might feel safer. Like it might look safe, like where like Lily Orchard has like no has no qualms about talking freely about her sex life and and some kinks when she knows that there are minors in the audience. She just doesn't care. Um, like so like somebody who's just like looking, like giving a passing glance and thinking to themselves, well, oh, if they're like 15 years old, they may think to themselves, well, okay, like I 15-year-old, Timmy, am a CSA survivor. And, Lily is being like really like oddly sexual while saying she's trying to make a safe place for CSA survivors. And that just seems really weird to me. But Ethel is like, explicitly like non-sexual in her public persona. Therefore, this might be safer for me. So it's like, it gives like a real false sense of security because like there's a problem with society where we don't, and I say like as a society, it's like, where like people generally don't seem willing to accept psychological abuse as abuse, because it's not violating someone's intimate autonomy, because it's not like, like physically violent. Like a lot of people don't see it as being like as abusive as the other, as the more overt abuse when it's like it is, and it will like it will mess a person up to be like psychologically abused, like so thoroughly mess a person up. And like, yeah, there's a psychological aspect to sexual abuse as well, and even to like non-sexual physical abuse. Like there's a psychological effort, um, um, there's a psychological aspect to all forms of abusing people. Um, but it's like even when it's like just psychological abuse, it will still mess a person up so thoroughly that it's kind of maddening. Okay. Okay. What she does is abusive regardless of the age of the victim. Redacted. That actually makes me feel better. Patchwork. I'm glad. Redacted. It's also just mildly people think I'm lying about this for out. Like they can't think I'm doing this to be transphobic, right? Patchwork. They say that about all victims. Um, something, something, something. That looks like it might say Opal, everyone she has harassed. Oh, okay, yeah. So this is like, it does look like he's talking about Lily Orchard. Okay.
Use poor word choice to discredit them. Glade said they only wrote the testimonial and that Ethel and Levi wrote the rest, and Patch also affirmed that Glade was abused. Levi called him an abuser after this, claiming that Patch was trying to gaslight Glade, and now Ethel is calling Patch a rape apologist and is making a video about him and others who were critical of Essence of Thought,
Whoa.
and that Ethel and Levi wrote time. Specifically, he disagreed with how they characterized Lily's behavior as grooming. Patch felt priming and indoctrination were better terms to use. In his conversation with Glade, he noted his concern that some bad actors may use poor word choice to discredit them. Glade said they only wrote the testimonial.
Okay, I'd like you to note on the messages in each of these screenshots, 'cause I lied about the order they were in. I've shown them in order of when they were sent. Okay. And this is so small. I'm not gonna try, but help me serve. Okay, this looks like a GoFundMe link, but yeah, I linked the full video in the chat box.
And that Ethel and Levi wrote the rest, and Patch also affirmed that Glade was abused. Levi called him an abuser after this, claiming that Patch was trying to.
Levi legit just asserted without evidence that Patch only tried to boost Glade's GoFundMe to one-up him and Ethel. This is gross. He also shared these messages out of order. I assume to imply that the GoFundMe was the first thing they talked about. I honestly thought I had the screenshot of them accusing Patch of gaslighting. Take this one with a grain of salt.
Gaslight Glade, and now Ethel is calling Patch a rape apologist and is making a video about him and others who were critical of Essence of Thought's Lily Orchard series.
I have no intention of engaging any further with this community, outside of a single video tackling rape apologists Ephraim, Yopal Gal, and Patch for the sake of the people they attacked, namely the victims that entrusted me with their testimony.
You see what I mean? Trans-femme Ben Stein. Like, did she wake up one day and think to herself, I know, I'm going to make my public persona every Hollywood stereotype of people with ASD being joyless couch fucks. Because that's what it feels like listening to her sometimes. It's like...
I was initially planning on omitting this section due to Patch telling Ephraim and Yopal Gal not to talk about this situation in their response to the second victim testimony. But as it stands now, I think Patch is going to need some support, especially when you consider that Ethel's punching him while he's down. The final thing I want to touch upon in this video is Ethel's claim that to defend Lily Orchard is to throw your lot in with a sexual...
If it hasn't already been established by the rest of the evidence by this point, this testimony shows that to defend Lily Orchard is simply to throw in your lot with a sexual predator who targets minors.
I take a few issues with this claim. What is Ethel referring to when she says defend? Is every criticism of her series equally bad, no matter what? Is it only bad to refute claims of sexual abuse, or are you defending child rape when you doubt allegations of racism? Can we just agree for a minute that the claim is clearly partially targeted at victims of Lily Orchard? And finally, how does Ethel parse this with her later claims that people should look at the evidence and make up their own minds because she is infallible? Because it looks to me like Ethel doesn't actually think she's fallible.
Yeah, note that, like, he misspoke and meant fallible when he said infallible just then.
If you disagree with her, you are clearly evil. The placement of Ethel's condemnation of criticism is also interesting to me because it's followed up by a blatant lie, which we'll be discussing later.
Chapter 3. How good was Ethel's Lily Orchard series?
Courtney Orchard said that Ethel's videos weren't good enough. Personally, I think that's a bit of an understatement. For my purposes, I'll be looking at the first and second victim testimony videos, which are the most important ones to get right, the section about racism in debunking Lily's pro-child predator lies, and the video where Ethel accuses Lily of sexually harassing her. But before we begin, I'd like to offer some praise for what I did like in this series. Ethel's videos on Doomsday Ascending and Stockholm are actually fairly decent from what I remember. Considering how much I hate Ethel, that's pretty high praise. While I would recommend the one on Doomsday Ascending, I'd prefer to recommend Opal's video on Stockholm because it's longer and far more detailed. I also recommend people listen to the testimonials at the beginning of the victim testimony videos. Both Glade and Mackenzie deserve to have their voices heard. Speaking, probably wondering what the lie I mentioned earlier was. The lie was first uttered in the first victim testimony video and was later repeated in the second one. They showed one of Lily's Tumblr posts as seen on screen now, where Lily said,
Okay, I'm gonna read this. First it's, Ozzy says, grabbed this from one of Ephraim's videos. Question, how often do people send you nudes into your submission email? Lily, maybe once or twice a month. Don't really keep track. Most of the people who do it heard that I don't keep anything they send me, and so just use it as a vector to do something they think is gutsy without the potential consequences. And, the text was super small in Ethel's video and requires the video quality to be set at 720p minimum to be legible if you're watching her videos. So yeah, this is like, not everybody's gonna have that, sharp, image capability on their computers or phones.
she receives nudes in her submission email. She claimed people do this as a way to do something they think is gutsy without risk of potential consequences. Okay, fine. The post Ethel talked about can very easily be read as a victim complaining about sexual harassment. We'll be talking about what's wrong with Lily's post later, cause it shows something interesting. Ethel claims that this post is Lily telling her fans that sending her nudes is a safe way to explore your sexuality. She does attempt to justify this claim in the first video, but the logic just doesn't follow.
Lily has confessed that people in her audience regularly send her naked photos of themselves, and while she claims to delete them all, there's no
I love how, like, on point I do my imitation of Ethel's. It's funny that it's just it's such a predictable, slow, monotonous, speech pattern with like these weird little inflections and emphasis on the most random seeming syllables.
fucking way to check that. This is the same person who went out of her way to violate the security of the Safe for Work section she set up on her server. How can we be sure she doesn't keep them, and how the living fuck can we be certain that none of the minors she has groomed have fallen victim to this? The sad fact is, we can't. All we can do is act on the facts that Lily Orchard is simultaneously putting out posts like these, whilst also grooming the minors in her audience. She is planting this thought in their minds, telling the minors in her audience that sending her naked photos of themselves.
Where the fuck did she say that, Ethel? And like I said, I just read this whole thing. Like, where the fuck did she say that, Ethel?
Is a safe way to explore their sexuality.
Her logic is literally, well, Lily grooms minors while saying this. If Ethel had simply said she's signaling to her audience that there are no consequences to sending her nudes, I wouldn't really be this bent out of shape about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, like Lily Orchard is, manipulative in a way that will plant, that you can easily see, see reasonable doubt in. Like, you can easily see, like, okay, yeah, she said this, but is she necessarily saying this because she knows that, like, teenagers will, see will like see a way to rationalize doing this themselves, right? Or is she just kind of stupid? I trust Courtney when she says that, that no, like, while yes, Lily Orchard is, stupid in a number of ways that, are very human. This is an area where Lily Orchard is smarter than people like Ethel. Like, she knows she can get away with saying stuff like this because the way it's worded just is like just vague enough to, say, no, that's not necessarily her intent. She could just be venting about, you know, in a very like half-hearted kind of like venting kind of way about like how people, might just randomly send her nudes, which, yeah, could be argued in a court as being, you know, um, you know, Lily being a victim of sexual harassment by getting random nudes in her inbox on Tumblr, right? So, yeah, like maybe Lily is making that part up, or, like it only seems like, um, um, or like it's only like true because Lily has like said other things like just vague enough that she knows teenagers will pick up on as a cue to, you know, um, go and do that without realizing that what was said, it was said intentionally to manipulate them into doing that without, while thinking they're doing this of their own volition, right? So it's like Ethel is making accusations that, if taken to a court of law, would come down on Lily's favor because of reasonable doubt, which applies in British court, which applies in US court, which applies in Canadian court, where Lily is saying these things. Like, Ethel knows, but she doesn't care. At least Ethel is just barely smart enough to know better than to make these wild accusations and think it's anything but defamation. I think she just doesn't care. I think she is like so high on her own victim narcissist complex that she thinks anything she says is justified because she's had it so bad her whole life. Oh my god. Why was I a CSA victim? Why was I why did the big scary brown man at the subway yell at me when I have passport that say M, so I go to M line for security, for security checks? Why I always victim? Why my foot hurt? Shut up, Ethel.
But she doesn't. Which begs the question, where did Lily say anything about exploring your sexuality? Because Ethel never substantiated this claim.
No. Uh-huh. That's Nigel's name? Can I have Nigel? Oh, quick. Ah, shit. Hold on, I'm scooching back so I can read
this. If Ethel had simply said she's signaling to her audience that there are no consequences to sending her nudes, I wouldn't really be this bent out of shape about it, but she doesn't. Which begs the question, where did Lily say anything about exploring your sexuality? Because Ethel never substantiated this claim.
The worst part is, I can put together an almost coherent thought process for this one, but Ethel never even bothers to share her thought process. My idea is, there are queer minors in her audience, minors that may be trying to explore their sexuality. So Lily's words may convince them to send nudes in order to explore their sexuality, I guess, but it still doesn't really work. And I'll agree with that. That, like, like that seems like a thing that Lily would do, but like, how do you parse it out other than Lily being just smart enough to know what to say that will cast reasonable doubt? Because I don't know, Lily Orchard strikes me as somebody with like not just narcissistic personality disorder, but like straight up, antisocial personality disorder as well. Like like comorbid NPD, APD, who is you know, a clinical a clinical sociopath, basically. Like, and clinical sociopaths can be very clever about this kind of thing because, you know, their motivation for doing anything is, you know, control over others.
And when you consider that this was said in videos containing the testimonials of this person's victims, it's just a stupid thing to lie about. This shit gets used against the victims. As I mentioned, Lily's post did show something interesting, which we'll be talking about in the next chapter. For now, what about those racism allegations? In the video titled Debunking Lily Orchard's Pro-Child Predator Arguments, Ethel dedicates about 7 minutes to calling out Lily's racism. How is Lily being racist? She called Ethel and Levi tenderqueers, and she says Karen a lot.
Note 9. There's a dedicated chapter marked in Ethel's upload. Please check it out, because I'm only showing a small portion here.
We also have to consider her usage of white supremacist language grounded in anti-black racism, as seen in this clip taken from her stream.
But ever since I found out that some of these people really hate it when you call them TERFs for ceaselessly lying about trans people, I suppose the technical word for what they're doing is called tenderqueer, but they get really mad when you call them a TERF, so I'm just going to keep calling them TERFs.
I was going to discuss this clip further down the line, but decided not to. I do think Lily's use of the term tenderqueer could be considered racist. I don't see it, but Ethel doesn't do an adequate job explaining why. I think she learned the term from Keffel's community, and this clip is from a time after Keffel's told her. Okay, now I want to this accusation of digital blackface. Okay, this is okay. Here's the thing. I commented on about this. So yeah, 21 minutes 16 seconds. I was watching that digital blackface live as it happened. Longer clips from that stream do exist, add further context to what Keffel said in that part of the stream, which was, going from memory because I can't be arsed to find the longer clips, make random pit crew accounts. It doesn't matter, just make them random. The more diverse, the better. Like, make a black butch lesbian and disabled, just random like that. And a couple of minutes later, she said, never mind, don't do this. It's stupid. We're not doing this. So this was like the little like gay ops. She said, we're doing the gay ops on tenderqueers. I continue. It's clear from context that the bit people like to twist into, Keffels directed her followers to do digital blackface, was, from where Keffels was sitting, just a random assortment of diverse traits when creating otherwise anonymous pit crew avatar Twitter accounts. It wasn't an unambiguous statement of do exactly this thing, but just an unscripted, off-the-cuff remark when vaguely asked by chatters in the stream. So, like, you can see, like, in, like, if you have a really good high-def, setting for your computer, like, if you can see in the text scrolling up from the longer clips of that stream that people were asking her what she meant by this, right? So, like, an unscripted off-the-cuff remark when vaguely asked by chatters to elaborate on what she meant by random pit crew accounts, and she just didn't think very much on how to best explain what she meant by the initial description of random pit crew accounts. Okay, I continue, scroll a little bit. I'm not defending that completely. Clearly, the social media telephone game turned that into something that bit her on the behind, in spite of quickly realizing that the initial directive was a stupid idea, and then telling the audience that she didn't want people doing any of that. I'm not even saying Keffels isn't racist, because I think everyone is in a racist society carries at least a little bit of racist indoctrination from being raised in said society. I'm only explaining that it really wasn't what a lot of people have since portrayed it as, and that, even a little extra context makes that much clearer. Ozzy Tovell responds, "If I recall correctly, I said that bit was weak," which he did. He's going to continue a little bit and say that this is like a weak, connection, right? I'd heard that there was more to it than presented, and I continue. Now I'm gonna save this because it's something I've harped on enough about in earlier Ethel streams, because yeah, like Ethel herself is pretty racist. If you want to no, she is, and she uses a mask of anti-racism, as well as the fact that she's married to a brown Indian woman, like of an Indian subcontinent ethnic group, right? I think the article Udita wrote that somebody sent me says she's Bangladeshi, ethnically. So yeah, like I've seen Ethel pretty clearly use the fact that she's married to Adita as like kind of a human shield to, like deflect any accusations that Ethel did or said something racist, right? It's like, no, you're pulling the same, I can't be racist, I got a black friend. And no, that's exactly what she's doing when she pulls up the fact that she's married to Udita, who is ethnically Bangladeshi from India. I'm like, lady, no, I see through this. I'm not the only one who sees through this. You're not that smart.
By the way, do you want to take a guess at who constantly uses the term Karen as if it's something trivial and even outright comical? Lily.
Also, it's used by African Americans who, like their predominant dialect in their day-to-day life is AAVE. In fact, like that is how the term Karen became like diffused into the common vernacular. It's something that came from AAVE. The white Karen archetype of, like this uppity white woman who, who thinks she can order people around and make them conform to her will, right? That's who does it. Like, why is let's listen to Ethel's logic here that reflects how she, like she will go on for like nearly an hour about the etymology of the word queer. And I use her video that does that. Like I had that in my history and info LGBTQ playlist, which is a public playlist of like really good, videos about some kind of LGBTQ history that I recommend for people. And I had Ethel's video about the etymology of the word queer and how it is not versely a slur, and the argument that it could be is kind of weak and just basically boils down to local dialect. I had that video in that playlist for years. Like even after Ethel banned me from her Discord server, because it was, a mostly good video. Like it was, it had more good points than bad. So like if Ethel wants to like wax on for like nearly an hour about the etymology of the word queer, why can't she give a nod to the etymology of, Karen as a disparaging pejorative about, like uppity middle-aged, sometimes younger women who, who think they can order people around and make them conform to her will.
She writes characters to be Karens, claims her exes are Karens, and has even talked of making content treating Karens as if they're nothing more than a joke. Because there's nothing inappropriate at all about a white...
Here's another thing Ethel does constantly, inflating the actions to be the absolute worst.
To be Karens, claims her exes are Karens, and has even talked of making content treating Karens as if they're nothing more than a joke. because there's nothing inappropriate at all about a white passing woman exploiting the murder of black children at the hands of other white women for comedy.
Yeah, those 2 points do not connect. You know, she could have said something about the etymology, but she doesn't. She just wants to go for, like, the most extreme hyperbole she can, because she's not that smart.
Ethel provides a bit of history about those words to show that they were hijacked by white supremacists, but she does nothing to show that Lily was using them in the way a white supremacist would use them, and it's all the more frustrating because Ethel and Levi literally are genderqueers. They regularly use their queerness as a shield when they are called out, most recently doing so against Courtney Orchard.
Nobody watching this video, unless they decided to randomly dig through Courtney's now terminated Tumblr, is going to realize that this is misinformation that I never claimed to have said screenshot.
She's not saying you have the screenshots.
Have elsewhere on a now deleted Tumblr
To attempt to read that, I can tell from, that is just too small.
to repeat said misinformation in a separate piece. It actually makes it worse. Not only are
she's saying, so Courtney is saying Ethel could have gotten them from the minor in question. So, yeah.
they promoting that misinformation to a new audience, they're promoting misinformation they've previously admitted wasn't true, making it active disinformation, i.e. a lie, just so that
superimposed note. No, it's not, you fucking liar. Because it's not disinformation. Like, what about that? Like, you have to show your work. If you don't show your work, like, for all I know, you could have just, like, randomly guessed and happened upon this, conclusion by accident. Which, honestly, is just, like, probably the fact. But it's like, Ethel does not believe in showing her work. Ethel believes in just, like, expecting people to just take her word for it. And if you don't, you're some kind of vile trans misogynist. I'm like, no, this has nothing to do with you being trans. It's got everything to do with you having, a shitty fucking attitude and, like, absolutely atrocious track record for lying to get your way and manipulate people.
that they can claim that I quote-unquote don't care, whilst accusing me of aiding a sexual predator who preys on children. That's horrific enough regardless of who it's done to, but in this, just so that they can claim that I quote-unquote don't care, whilst accusing me of aiding a sexual...
Ethel has a sexual predator who preys on children. How? Ethel, show your work. Pics or it didn't happen. Like, show how this happened. Pics or it didn't happen.
Sexual predator who preys on children. That's horrific enough.
At least one of the people accused by Ethel was a victim of Lily Orchard's. And Ethel is accusing these people of aiding a sexual predator, i.e. Lily Orchard, for no other reason than they think Ethel did a piss-poor job of advocating for the victims. Or just making shit up. Interesting.
Regardless of who it's done,
kind of suggests that it's not so much about informing the public of Lily Orchard's crimes as much as it is about inflating Ethel's own ego as being somehow the most virtuous yet most victimized person on the entire internet. Wah, wah, wah.
just so that they can claim that I quote-unquote don't care, whilst accusing me of aiding a sexual predator who preys on children. That's horrific enough regardless of who it's done to, but in this context, this is outright transmisogyny. Courtney is knowingly lying
Ethel is playing the victim whilst lying about a CSA survivor.
about an AMAB trans femme person, presenting them as being complicit in child sexual abuse at the height of the ongoing anti-trans moral panic, conflating trans people with grooming children. That is actually dangerous.
You're right, I need to.
I also don't really like how Ethel ignores how the word Karen is often used to call out the power dynamic between upper middle class white women and the workers they abused.
Exactly. Like, interpretation of, like, how Karen is used by certain people is just it's just flabbergasting. Like, she ignores so much whilst relying on, you know, the fact that she did technically point something out.
Fast food and customer support, for instance, and have had a number of horror stories about Karens. I've been through a lot, ranging from white women screaming at me for small mistakes to them outright assaulting me. One lady grabbed my phone from my hand and broke it while I was on the phone with my boss. But Ethel seems to characterize this as women just demanding respect or being too loud. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people who use Karen in the way Ethel called out. There most certainly are, and Lily is one of them. But Ethel never bothers to actually substantiate the fact that Lily actually is. And because of Ethel's flimsy reasoning and lazy analysis, I walked away from this video more trustful of Lily. Anyone remember that video where Ethel accuses Lily of sexually harassing her? I do. Ethel claims that this video was an act of solidarity with other victims of Lily Orchard. But is she, though?
No, it was an act of narcissism. It was an act of total fucking narcissism. Now, I've got a cat yelling at me to take a shower, so, and I don't even, like, have a funk, but I think he knows that, like, I gotta shower because circadian rhythms and it's past my bedtime, etc., and he wants me to have some Nigel time before I go to sleep because I gotta be up. So I'm gonna, like, I don't know, like, let's go up through, you know what? Let's go up through the end of this chapter.
Well, she centers herself in the thumbnail and title. Think about that for a second. Lily Orchard sexually harassed me publicly. The thumbnail has Ethel looking as clear as day. Is it any wonder why Courtney reacted the way she did to this video? Ethel clearly did this so that people would go into it already sympathetic to her. So even though she dedicates a third of the video runtime to other victims of Lily, Ethel is still the main focus as far as sympathy is concerned. How hard would it have been to make a better thumbnail? To title the video, Lily Orchard sexually harassed her critics publicly. These minor changes would have made a huge difference in how the video was received.
Exactly. But she doesn't do that. It never occurs to her to do that because Ethel is a pathological narcissist. And, you know, I would say this of any public figure with the same track record. You know, any other public figure, regardless of size, with the same track record.
And many of Ethel's critics may have left it alone. Courtney probably wouldn't have said anything about it at all. But then again, it probably wouldn't have let Ethel play the righteous victim.
Courtney's feisty enough. I think Courtney still would have, like, you know, thought it was stupid. At the very least, you know, like, I don't think she would have completely ignored it because she's feisty. I don't like it. But she definitely would have called it out as stupid.
Hey folks, viewer mail time again. Oh, here's one from Sally, age 14. Dear Pig, aren't you
Moving on without answering the main question of the last chapter?
Well, the answer is yes, Sally. Yes, I am. Keep those cards and letters coming.
Okay, so I said I was only gonna end it at the end of chapter 3 on this. So that's the end there. And I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in with me tonight. I got at least one super chat, which is nice. But yeah, I gotta go like do my my various self-care stuff, like a shower before bed, take my nighttime meds. Yep. And so I am like fresh and vibrant for the history podcaster lecture tomorrow with my friend Lucifer, who I met on the YouTubes. All right. And hopefully I will have this scarf finished in. Oh, hey, I'm just done with this round. All right. So I have reached the all right. So let's see. This brings me up to. Okay. I'm almost like. Yeah, I'm almost halfway done with this stage, which is the final stage. So I should be able to do it tomorrow before Luce shows up. And if it's not completely finished, I can do like the final row like in the car or something on the way to the thing. So all right. Stay hydrated, take your meds, feel free to waste your time following me on other social media platforms where I do and say stupid shit because it entertains me. And oh god. I am behind on my shampooing schedule. Because my psoriasis medication is building up. But yeah, drink your water, stay hydrated, take your meds if you need them. Hug your cats. They love you. And like I said, feel free to waste your time on social media following me. If you have money to waste, I'm on Ko-Fi, where you can tip me on a monthly or just sporadic basis. You can also like request commissions for stuff and nonsense, including like oracle card readings that I do. And that's all I can think of right now. Bats and kisses, no star, Aquil.